I told my mother that I was coming out to a story slam, and I had explained what that was because she'd never heard of it before. And I told her that the theme was hunger. And she said, I worked very hard to make sure you were never hungry in your entire life. And it's true. It's true. As a kid growing up, there were 4 boys in our house. And my mother would go to the grocery store, and if their lawn needed to be mowed or the windows needed to be washed, the dishes needed to be put away, it was always a fight. But she never needed to ask for help putting away the groceries because we wanted to see what was coming in. So growing up, I was never really hungry. But when I got into college, I'd gotten involved in this Native American group. We went out into the woods and did sweat lodges and learned survival skills. And so when they told me that they were going to be doing a vision quest, which if you don't know, it means you go up on the side of the hill for 3 days with no food and no water and sit by yourself doing nothing, trying to have a spiritual experience. I said, 3 days, no food, no water, that sounds like a great idea. I changed my mind after day 1. I wasn't so sure I was cut out for it. It's a very different thing to be hungry and have no way to get food. I knew that I could leave this hill at any time. Right down at the bottom of the hill, there was a tent full of food for us when we came down, and there was no shame to coming down early. You came down when you were ready, but I was dedicated. I wanted to stay the full 3 days. So after the first day, I'm looking around and I'm like trying to remember what you can eat, and there's no dandelions there. I'm looking at the bark on the trees thinking it might be a good idea. And then I'm seeing ants walking, and I'm remembering that they eat those in some countries. When I found myself looking at the dirt thinking it would at least fill my stomach, I knew that I was in trouble. But the important thing of this story is that I was not in fact up on the hill alone. There were 5 or 6 other people who'd gone up to do this at the same time. It was a large piece of land belonging to a friend of mine. And we all started in the same spot, but we spread out and hiked and hiked and hiked trying to find our perfect spot. So we'd be spread out across this land. And it turns out we hiked and spread out and then wound up coming back. And we were all in a tight little circle. But none of us knew it. None of us could see each other. Now, for safety purposes, there were several other people who had been trained in walking silently through the woods, who it was their job to come up several times a day and check on us and make sure that we were in fact okay. But the goal was that we should never ever see them. And they were good at what they did. I'd seen them walking silently before, but we were packed so closely together that their job was very, very hard. So I was sitting in my little circle looking at the ants, trying to decide if it was worth it. And I heard this, and I looked over, and sure enough, there's 2 of my friends, the ones who are supposed to be watching us, are standing there, and they're looking at me with this look of fear, and then they quickly duck down, hiding behind a bush. So it wasn't until the end of this vision quest that I came back down the hill, and I'm finally eating some food, that I found out their side of the story. The 2 of them had been walking very carefully, trying to be silent, trying to check on all of us while not being seen, which was very challenging. And the one of them had turned to make a hand signal to the other. And when he turned straight into the web of a spider. And it wasn't a little spider. It was one of those big, huge, hairy orb spiders. And as the spider web's on his face, he knew that he'd seen the spider as he went into the web. And he's checking his face, looking to see where it was. And he finally realizes that it's in his mouth. He said it was on the little hangy downy thing back there. So when I had heard he had been trying to expel the spider. When he realized that I'd heard him and he had that extreme look of fear, he ducked down and he realized that there was no easy way to get this spider out because it was holding on for dear life. So he had a choice. He could make more noise knowing that there's other people around him that aren't supposed to hear him, or he could swallow the spider. So the good news is he was able to successfully swallow the spider without making more noise. It took him a little while because it was fighting the entire way. If you're wondering He said it tasted kind of like chicken. But ultimately, the important part of the story is, even when you're really, really, really hungry, there are always worse things you could be eating.